As spring was slowly arriving on our homestead, we welcomed our 7th child. This postpartum season has been like most of my others. It's a long road to recovery. I have to pace myself and constantly remind myself that this is a process. Today I want to take you along with me as I showed you what it's like for us to eat a week of postpartum meals. Most of these meals I made beforehand, like the meatloaf you see here, and that's what really helps me out in the first few weeks postpartum. Now, I don't want you to worry, I wasn't on my feet right after the birth. I'm about 3 weeks postpartum in this video, so I've had some time to rest and enjoy the newborn snuggles, but today I am cooking for my family once again. I had a meatloaf that I had frozen and put in our deep freezer. I basically make the meatloaf and put the sauce on it and then freeze it instead of cooking it. So this meatloaf has to be thawed and placed in the oven. I forgot to thaw it that morning, so it's going in frozen, so I gave myself a couple of hours to cook it in the oven. I also wanted to serve it with some mashed potatoes. My husband had made some mashed potatoes the night before, so I'm just going to go ahead and reheat those, and we will be serving it with peas. My strategy for postpartum cooking is really to keep it as simple as possible without having to resort to restaurant foods or boxed meals or anything like that. I want to make sure that I am still giving my family nutrient-dense meals so that we can all benefit from having those foods nourishing our bodies. That's especially for myself. Since I am postpartum, I do need to make sure that I am using foods to basically heal my body. One thing I have been finding extremely helpful this postpartum season is consuming a raw carrot salad every day. I saw this on Instagram and I thought, I'll give it a try. It sounded too good to be true, I guess. And I heard a lot of women talking about how if they consumed this raw carrot salad, which is super easy to make every single day, they saw changes in their hormone levels, they saw changes in their face and the way their lips looked. So I decided, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. We have a bunch of carrots in the basement. I'm going to give this a try. So I started off by grating a carrot. Now you're actually supposed to slice it lengthwise using a vegetable peeler, but when you're in a pinch, you can go ahead and use a grater. You also need 1 teaspoon of coconut oil and 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and then just sprinkle it with salt. And I have to say that I think it might be working because this postpartum recovery has been a lot easier than my others. For example, my bleeding has stopped much sooner than my other births, and it was a lot less heavy. So I guess it might be working. I'm going to keep trying it and let you guys know how it works. My husband says he sees differences in my face. I don't know yet. I haven't noticed big differences yet, especially because I'm postpartum and so there's some swelling going down and stuff from the pregnancy. I will let you know in a while if I still think this is working and if I continue doing it. If I had some sauerkraut, I would also be serving sauerkraut with this meal. Unfortunately, I ran out, and so we're just having it with the mashed potatoes and the peas, but it was still delicious. The next day, I got our meal of the day cooking pretty early, right after lunch. It was a chicken noodle soup. To make this, I make everything you need for the soup except for the noodles. So some bone broth, I put in some celery, some onions, some carrots, some frozen corn. And once the soup was cooled down, I put it in gown-size Ziploc bags. Once this cooked for a few hours, it was ready to go. And so I got my noodles going and I just added them to the soup broth that you can see in the slow cooker. Before I had the baby, I also froze a bunch of homemade bread, and so we pulled one of those breads out so we could have it with the soup and a little bit of butter. I'm trying to avoid wheat and gluten, basically just carbs, as much as possible, so I did not have the bread with it. I opted instead to add an egg to my soup to make it kind of like an egg drop style soup. To do this, I just took some of the chicken noodle soup base and added it to a separate saucepan, and then I took a whisked egg and slowly added it to the soup while stirring, so it created those long noodly type egg shapes inside the soup, and it also adds more protein to the soup itself, so that worked. One of the tricks I've learned for the kids so that they can have their soup a little bit earlier is to add some frozen vegetables, either corn or peas or that like corn, carrot, pea mix thing to their soups so that it cools it down. We added it completely frozen. The hot broth will cook it and it will also cool the soup down at the same time so they can eat it quicker. The following day was so warm and beautiful out, I decided I wanted a meal that was a little bit lighter, and so I opted to do a pork roast and serve it with some apple barbecue sauce and some rice and some corn, just keep things pretty light. I took a pork leg out of our deep freezer from the batch of pigs that we had butchered last year, and then to that I added some bone broth. As you can see, I did not thaw it out ahead of time. It was still frozen, and so I just used an ice cream scoop after setting it out on the counter for an hour or so, and it comes out kind of like ice cream. I also added some salt, some pepper, some garlic powder, a little bit of onions that I had cut beforehand and frozen, some mustard, and some maple syrup. And I just let it sit in the slow cooker all day until it was nice and tender. I am a big fan of meals that don't require me to stand around the kitchen cooking for long amounts of time, especially when it's beautiful out. And so this meal allowed me to spend most of my day outside with the kids and then just go in to quickly make some white rice and boil up some frozen corn so that I could have dinner on the table for my family. Once again, if I had had some sauerkraut handy, I would have served it with this meal. I did end up cutting up a big batch of sauerkraut that week so that we could have it later on, but since we didn't have any, I just served it as is. find that one of the biggest challenges with cooking when you are postpartum is that it seems that whenever you get started on something, the baby wakes up and wants to nurse. So when you first set the baby down, he's fine, and so you figure you have all this time to get things done. And so by the time you get to actually cooking, he's up and fussy again. And so then you have to decide whether you keep cooking or you tend to the baby or you wear him. There's many options you could take. I usually try to nurse the baby on demand. So if he's fussing, I will stop cooking, go nurse him, try to put him in his chair. If he's not happy in his chair, then he'll go in the wrap. If he's not happy in the wrap, then I try to bribe one of the older kids to hold him for a little bit just so I can get supper on the table. And that seems to be working for us so far. I serve the pork with an apple barbecue sauce that I got from the Ball canning book, and it's so good, and the kids are all big fans of it, and it uses applesauce, which I always have on hand, so I definitely recommend this recipe. My next quick and easy meal was a pasta with meat sauce. What I did is I made a huge batch of meat sauce when I was expecting the baby, and then I divided the sauce into different gallon-sized bags, labeled them, put them in the deep freezer, and then the day of I'm supposed to take it out and let it thaw, but of course I forgot again because that's what being postpartum is like. And so I just put it in the oven in a big 9x13 pan, and over time it sort of broke down, and I would push it down with a spoon to make sure none of it spilled out. And it actually made the sauce quite nice, and it thickened it up a little bit, so it was actually even better than the first time we ate it. I'm serving the meat sauce with some pasta I got from Costco. That's where I find the cheapest organic pasta right now. I don't know why, but it seems like the price of organic pasta has gone up around here. I was looking for sourdough pasta recently, and the box of pasta was $14. That's insane. Who can afford $14 pasta? Anyways, so it's not sourdough, it's just an organic pasta from Costco. I'm trying to source something better. If anyone has any tips of where I can find some better quality pasta in Canada, please let me know in the comments because I'm about to give up here. And so we're just serving it with the one from Costco, which is fine. The kids actually really love the taste. I just know that there are better quality ingredients out there for pasta, and this one doesn't necessarily have it. We served our pasta with cheese on top, and the kids were very happy with this meal. If you want an option where you're not consuming the pasta, sometimes I do spaghetti squash pasta or zucchini noodles, something like that. The final day of the week was a Friday. Now, we are Catholic and we don't consume meat products on Fridays. So it's always fish or something like that, like a vegetarian meal. This time I chose to make some salmon patties. I got this recipe from Farmhouse on Boone. I will link that in the comments for you. It's so simple and so cheap. I get 6 cans of salmon and I throw them in a bowl. We add some arrowroot powder to the mixture, some eggs, some salt, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and then I just smush it together with my hands and form little salmon patties. And then we cook those in coconut oil on a hot skillet, a few minutes per side. It really doesn't need that much time, just until it's golden brown and holding its shape together a little bit better, and then they are ready to go. I honestly think the longest part of this recipe is just opening up the cans of salmon because that seems to take a really long time. I'm I'm so thankful my husband was home during this time and he was able to hold the baby while I finished up the patties, or else I would have been finishing these with a baby who's not super happy in the carrier. But that is how postpartum goes, and you just get used to it. We decided to serve our fish patties with a homemade aoli. So to do this, I make a homemade mayo first using egg yolk and some avocado oil and some lemon juice. I think I have showed you guys this recipe before. And then to it, I just add a bunch of chopped garlic, not too much because you're going to keep it raw. And so I know that sometimes if you put too much raw garlic in something, it makes it spicy and my kids don't love it. So just a little bit of garlic. This was enough spice for the older kids, but the younger kids were still complaining it was too spicy. So we'll see if I alter it next time or if I keep the same amount of garlic in it. Once the garlic is all chopped up, I add it to the mayo, and then I use the immersion blender just to really get it mixed in there. And this is actually a really versatile dipping sauce. You could use it for fries, you could use it for vegetables if you really wanted to. My family really enjoys it as long as it's not too spicy. We serve the salmon patties with some rice and some broccoli. We also grated some cheese over the top of the broccoli just to add a little bit more nutrients to this meal, and everyone's a big fan of this one. And that's it for me this week. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back again next week with a new video. In the meantime, if you would like to keep up with me, you can follow me on Instagram. I sometimes update there. And I hope you all have a great week.